I think that's really insightful for any of the listeners who are trying to figure out what they want to do. And if they know what they want to do, not to just sit on your ass and wait for it to happen, but go make it happen. All right, guys, welcome back to the Adam Nessum Show. Today, I have Jake Asman with me, a good friend back in the day who's now doing great things himself. So Jake Asman, just a little intro on him, is a national sports talk show host at Sports Map Radio, formerly known as SB Nation Radio, and a local host and reporter at ESPN 97.5 Houston. You can listen to the Jake Asman Show on Sports Map Radio every weekday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern. So Jake, thanks for being here.
Adam, appreciate you having me. This is pretty cool to be on your podcast and get a chance to chop it up with you.
Yes, I really appreciate it. Cool to see people from my high school doing great things. For those of you that don't know, me and Jake go way back. So again, appreciate you being here. So for our listeners, my first question is, because I'm sure a lot of people aren't as familiar with your amazing work, but can you give a little background on what you do and how you got to that point in your career?
Sure. So what I do is I'm a nationally syndicated sports radio host. The network I host my show on, it's called the Jake Asman Show. It's called Sports Map Radio. We recently rebranded the name of the network from SB Nation Radio to Sports Map Radio. So basically, what I do every day is I do a syndicated sports talk show that airs in a bunch of different markets throughout the country. And even though I'm based here in Houston, where the network is located, the show I do is about a bunch of different national topics. So, for instance, not every show is going to be about the Houston Texans or the Houston Astros. It's going to be all about what's happening. That's the biggest story in sports that day. So whether it be the NBA Finals coming up, previewing that, or breaking down a huge Monday night football game between the Ravens and the Chiefs, and interviewing a big name on a certain team, or having a big reporter on to talk about a matchup. The show's a little bit different every day, but you can expect, big opinions, interesting guests, and, just a show that's very interactive with callers and, live streaming, Facebook comments and Twitch comments, and kind of very interactive radio show. So that's what I do, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern time. And, it doesn't actually feel like a real job, which is, I guess, kind of what you want, right? To actually have a job you enjoy, and it doesn't actually feel like a job.
That's definitely the goal for most people, I would say. So that's good to hear. And although you don't always cover national topics, how about Houston Texans right now as we're recording this?
Yeah,
they're hitting national news.
They are. They're sitting there at 0-3, and obviously they've been in the offseason a lot for some of the moves that their head coach and now general manager Bill O'Brien has made. Most notably, of course, the DeAndre Hopkins debacle, because that's what I call it, because you just can't argue in any world where that made sense. But yeah, they've certainly been in the news a ton, and I'm lucky to be in Houston locally when I do get a chance to host for our sister station, the local ESPN affiliate. ESPN 97.5 Houston, that there's three great professional sports teams to talk about, right? The Astros obviously have been very good, and they were marred in a cheating scandal that certainly was great, to give opinions on as a sports radio host.
Mm-hmm.
Same with the Houston Texans and their star power. They're always interesting. And then obviously the Houston Rockets have two of the top 10 players in the NBA, and James Harden and Russell Westbrook. So they're always relevant as well. So it's a great sports city, and it's an awesome city to be living in as my first kind of first full-time gig after moving away from New York.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I was also just referencing to, correct me if I'm wrong, they were making headlines because there was like a lot of false positive COVID tests for the Texans is what I saw. That kind of crosses over into my world with medicine and everything.
I think you mean the Titans, right? But the Titans.
Oh, am I? Okay, maybe I'm wrong on that. You're the expert in this area.
No, so you're not wrong though, because the Texans are involved. So the Titans had 3 players as of right now, when we sit and record this, that tested positive for COVID. Now the Titans just played the Vikings, and they all had to be retested and held out of practice today to make sure none of them had it. To make sure that when they played on Sunday, the Titans and the Vikings, that they didn't spread the virus. So the Vikings are playing the Texans on Sunday. So that game is kind of up in the air right now if it will happen, because if the Vikings got the virus maybe from the Titans, then all of a sudden the Texans then can't play on Sunday. So that's how they're directly involved in all this.
Got it. See, I needed your expert breakdown. I also was looking in before. I think there was something where some of their players were falsely testing positive for COVID, but I have to look into that more. But awesome. All right. So anyway, how about though, because I know, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, like getting into this industry is sports radio and like the sports market in general is pretty difficult. So can you talk a little bit about your path? I think it's a good story for anyone who's looking to, go out there, achieve their dreams, and something that they really want to do, of like the perseverance you've had to actually get to where you are now.
Yeah, no doubt. It's certainly a challenge, and I always, tell people that it's not going to be easy. You don't make a whole lot of money early on. You really have to grind, and you really have to, market yourself well. You have to be, your biggest supporter. You got to believe in yourself, and I also think, you have to also be realistic about your own abilities. Like, not everyone is made to be on the air. Not everyone is made, to be able to do a talk show. Some people maybe are better suited in working behind the scenes as a producer, or working as a board operator, doing something else involved in specifically sports radio. But, that applies for sports media, sports journalism in general as well. So, I was very lucky, and this, Adam, because we went to high school together. But Syosset High School in Long Island, where I'm from, was one of just a few, Long Island radio station, or a few Long Island high schools that actually had a student-run radio station in the basement of the school, WKWZ Syosset. So, as a ninth grader, as a 13-year-old at Syosset High School, I had the opportunity to get on the air and do my own talk show and try out for the high school radio station. And I kind of fell in love with sports radio then, and thought, wow, like, this would be amazing if I could go to college for this and then eventually get a career in it. I grew up a huge sports fan in New York and always listened to, sports radio when I was in the car with my dad. So, the opportunity to kind of get a taste of what it was I wanted to do at such a young age, allowed me to have an idea of what I was looking for in a college, right? I wanted to go to a good communication school. So, when I was looking for the right college, Ithaca College made a lot of sense. They had, an outstanding radio and TV program. Really good, access for freshmen right away to get on the air and be involved, because that was important to me as well. I came from high school with 4 years of radio experience, so I wanted to go somewhere that would allow me to be on the air right away. You go to some of these schools like Syracuse, you might have to wait 2 years before you really get a chance, right? But I wanted to go somewhere that would allow me to, prove what I could do as a freshman in college. And Ithaca presented that opportunity. I had a great 4 years there, some awesome internships along the way, some incredible hands-on experience. And, I parlayed that after graduating from Ithaca with a part-time job as an associate producer at WFAN and CBS Sports Radio in Lower Manhattan in New York City. And while I was working there part-time, making not a whole lot of money, but getting some hands-on experience, I was also hosting an internet show at a station that was based in Ronkonkoma, just getting up-to-date, resume tape and improving as a sports talk show host. So then I could send updated audio to different radio stations throughout the country, hoping to, catch on and land a full-time gig. And about a year after graduating, while working these two part-time jobs, my now boss at Sports Map Radio and ESPN Houston heard my demo tape, really liked what he heard, gave me a call, and he said that we have an opening for a reporter and someone that could do some fill-in work during the week and have a weekend show on the network. So it was about a year after graduating from Ithaca that I moved, from New York down to Houston, and I've been here ever since, just over 2 years.
Wow, that's awesome, man. And it sounds like, yeah, there was a little bit of luck in the beginning of the path where, you had that opportunity as a 13-year-old freshman in high school. But I would also say, if you're any of the listeners hearing Jake speak with that story, he went out there and made his own luck as well. You took a lot of strategic opportunities and really were still hustling throughout that entire time, not waiting for something to just hit you in the face, but really going out, practicing your craft, like really taking steps and taking risks on yourself, where eventually it was able to pay off. So I think that's really insightful for any of the listeners who are trying to figure out what they want to do, and if they know what they want to do, not to just kind of sit on your ass and wait for it to happen, but like you go make it happen.
Yeah, and one of the great things about just kind of how technology's evolved since, I guess 2009, when I first, got on the radio for the first time as a high school kid, is there's things like what we're doing right now through Zoom, right? I mean, anyone could start a podcast now. Anyone can start a blog. Anyone can, just do a live video show with their friends and get experience. So if you want to be on air, if you want to be a broadcaster, it's never been easier to try and get that type of experience. You don't necessarily need to have a high school radio station to have access to decide you want to do, you want to go into a career in sports radio or sports TV. So I always tell young broadcasters, because I get this question a lot, it's just, go somewhere that will let you get on the air right away. Do something where you could just get reps. Who cares if only 2 people are going to hear your podcast? Who cares if only your mom and dad are going to hear or read your blog that you write? Producing content is content, and it's like a great athlete that is talented, but then they really refine their game at practice, right? The greatest athletes aren't just great because of their natural ability. They're great because they practice at it, right? Kobe Bryant wasn't an all-time great just because he was talented. That's certainly part of it, but he worked harder than anyone. Same thing with LeBron and any of these, great athletes out there. So it's the same thing with, content producing and trying to be on the air. You just have to do it. You have to get reps. You have to get comfortable, with yourself and get comfortable, figuring out kind of what your style is. And the only way to do that is just to get experience and to fail a lot, make your mistakes, and get better from it.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely great advice. Getting those reps in, no matter what it is, whether it is being a radio talk show host, whether when it comes to, my field of medicine, that's why we have to put in so many hours during residency, is like you really need to get those reps in and to be able to do it, hopefully in an environment where you can learn and grow from. And that's why if you're starting out and you only have, like you said, two of your parents listening to your show, well, awesome. That's a great way and time to make those mistakes. So how would you say that getting those reps in early ended up factoring into your later successes and being able to jump on opportunities when they come?
Yeah, I think it really put me in position where, as an example, going from high school to Ithaca College, I had 4 years of on-air experience. In addition to, working at Syosset High School as a talk show host, I got to do play-by-play for the Syosset football team, the Syosset baseball team, and basketball team, and get play-by-play reps. And it allowed me to kind of get a feel for what I like. Did I like doing sports talk shows more? Did I like doing play-by-play more? Kind of gave me an idea of what I felt comfortable with, what I enjoyed doing. So it certainly helped, when I got to Ithaca. And then, coming into Ithaca with 4 years of experience, that allowed me to maybe have a leg up on some of the other freshmen that were coming in and allow myself to have, more opportunities early on and really identify, what it was I wanted to do in sports media. You could say you want to work in sports, but that's very broad, right? What specifically do you want to do? And what having all this experience allowed me to do is when I got out of college, I had a plan for, how I wanted to pursue being a sports talk show host. And, at Ithaca, what was so amazing about the school was I got a chance to do a little bit of everything. I wrote for the school paper. I did a podcast. I did a radio show. I did play-by-play for both radio and television. I got a chance to anchor on TV and figure out if I wanted to be, a news reporter or a news anchor, and just getting all that type of hands-on experience, kind of helped mold me into the broadcaster I was graduating, and then just kind of having an idea of and it was always about reps for me. I always tell people, go to a college, that will, give you an opportunity to get on the air, get experience, because as we talked about, there's no substitute for it. You could have the greatest internships in the world, and that doesn't mean that you can host a national talk show, right? That doesn't mean that ESPN's going to hire you when you graduate. You have to really grind. You have to, be yourself's biggest critic, and you have to try and just find ways to get better and not think that you have it all figured out, because nobody has it all figured out when they graduate.
Do you think, because I see this trend changing a little bit when it comes to colleges, unless it's for professional careers like doctor, lawyer, et cetera, that there will be a lot of students still needing to go to college for journalism and that type of area, sports media, et cetera? Or is it going to be a field you can kind of break into by starting a podcast and then maybe you get picked up, or some sort of alternative path?
Yeah, I think it's ever so changing, where I think if you want to be like a journalism person, you want to be like a reporter, I think there's value in having a 4-year degree in that, and understanding ethics and understanding processes and understanding, the right protocols to chase after a story and to, put together a feature or write a column or, and all that type of stuff. If you want to be a sports radio host, you don't necessarily need to go to college for that. I mean, there's opportunities to get experience, get reps on your own, maybe, start small at a station as a board op, work your way to a producer. Maybe you get an opportunity to get on the air. There's no rule that says, oh, you need to have a college degree to host a sports talk show. So I think every kind of form in media is evolving, and there's no right or wrong way to go about it. I always tell people, take a look at how people in the industry that you admire kind of study what their path was. And it's definitely going to be different than whatever your path is, but kind of get an idea for what is the quote unquote normal way people go about it. It doesn't mean your way will be anything like that, but it just kind of educates yourself on the different paths there are to go into it, because you're right. There's a lot of different ways you could break into a certain field, and you don't always have to go to a 4-year college to do it.
Got it. Awesome. That's great advice. So, next question for you. Do you think that where you are today, like, actually, let me rephrase. Did you envision that you would be where you are today when you were, in high school and college thinking about your future career path?
I
And how
never
does that plan match like where you are now?
Yeah, I never really envisioned like not doing something in sports media. So like there was never like a fallback option, like, oh, I'm go be a lawyer if this doesn't work out, or
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'll
Mm-hmm.
go and you know have a desk job, a 9 to 5 job or something like that. Like my goal was to work in sports media. That was always the goal. It became sports radio when I realized that I was better at that than I was, doing play by play. I was better at that than I was, reading a teleprompter, doing a newscast. So like my idea for what I wanted to do has evolved over time, but my goal has always been to work in sports media and to just kind of be familiar with how the entire business operates and be able to have a bunch of different skills. Like, we were talking off air about some of the things we do content wise on social media and YouTube and editing clips and promoting our shows. And I think you need to be able to do a lot more than just turn on the microphone and talk. You have to be
Mm-hmm.
versatile. You have to give your employer a reason why they should keep you on over somebody else that could be a lot cheaper than you are. So I've always kind of had the focus of doing something in sports media and then always trying to kind of learn everything there is that goes with it.
Awesome. Yeah, I think two main points there that I thought were great is one, being versatile and really making sure that you're continuing to develop on your skill set, because you could be great as a talk show host or whatever it is, but there's going to be other things that you're going to need to develop over time to be successful and a great candidate. And secondly is how you mentioned that you never had a plan B. And I actually give this type of advice when I'm advising students who want to be doctors and go to medical school. Some will come to me with very clear plan Bs, like, oh, if this doesn't work out, I'm going to be a PA, or I'm going to go into this. And if I take a look at all the students that have plan Bs versus the ones that don't, an overwhelming majority of the time, if you don't have a plan B, you're getting to that end goal. When you have that plan B, it's kind of like a fallback that you never will put your full effort into what you really want, because you kind of aren't just bought into the process and willing to do everything that you can to get there. So I think that's a great point, and something to think about for any listeners who are trying to figure out what career they want to go into, and if they know that, not to start thinking of backup plans, but really to see how can I go full in and figure out how I can get to where I want.
I totally agree. I think, the biggest thing you could do is have a goal, focus on your goal. And, you're young enough where if you don't reach that goal, or maybe you start trying to chase that goal and you realize, hey, maybe you were wrong about this. This is not what you end up wanting to do. You can always change course. You can always change paths. But, if you're focused on something and you fall in love with something like I did with radio and sports media at such a young age, I felt like I owed it to myself to pursue that passion of mine. Even when I was a year out of school making, $15 an hour at WFAN and, still living, with my mom and dad because I couldn't afford to get my own place, like that was okay to me because I knew that, I had a plan, and I was never going to be outworked by anyone. I was always going to do what it took, to reach my goal. But there's nothing wrong with having a plan B, but I agree with you, Adam. I think if you're so dead set on something and you work hard at it, more times than not, you'll figure out a way to accomplish that goal.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's clear how hard you've been working towards your goals. And I think we all knew you were going to go do big things in this industry from very early on. So it's great to see that that's coming to fruition. What would you say your goals looking forward are with your career?
Yeah, I love producing content. I want to continue to try and grow my audience, grow my listenership, grow my social impact, whether it be, on my Instagram account or my Twitter account. I want to have, a voice that matters when it comes to sports. And, I just want to continue to get better as a show host. I don't know if I'm always going to be, at my current company. I don't know if I'm always going to be, living in Houston. My goal would be one day to get back, to New York City doing radio there, but that doesn't happen overnight. So, I've always looked at it like, just keep working hard, building relationships with people and just trying to get better to put myself in position where, a bigger opportunity down the line could potentially open up. But, with everything happening with the pandemic right now and everything happening
Right.
with the economy, I'm just so grateful that I'm working and, getting the opportunity every day to go to work and get a chance to entertain an audience.
It's a great outlook to have, and I'm sure those goals you'll get closer and closer to them as you continue to work hard. What has it been like for someone who's entered this space and you're starting to talk to big names, big major athletes that you might have looked up to when you were younger, or whether it's coaches you're talking to and interviewing with? How has that been in regards to just talking to these somewhat celebrity names where you're just entering this space?
Sure. It's a lot of people are like, oh, like, how do you not get nervous, or like, what is it like? And it's like, I think I think nerves are a good thing. I think nerves help keep you focused and kind of it's not necessarily, the worst thing in the world, but I think the more you do something like anything else, you get more comfortable with it. So, I've been fortunate where I've interviewed a bunch of big names before. Well, yeah, there's something special about, having a one-on-one over the phone with Joe Montana, or having Martha Stewart sit next to you at a Super Bowl Radio Row and interview her, or have three members of the Backstreet Boys come on your show. No doubt you get excited, and there's like that kind of nervousness and that nervous energy before. But, that's why you prepare as hard as you do. That's why you had the experience that you have. So it just kind of feels like you and I, like, we're just having a conversation. That's always, been my approach in interviews. I want the listener to feel like they're kind of in that conversation, like it's just two people sitting at a bar, talking about whatever. That's how I've always liked to treat, my show and treat my interviews. So I think, as exciting as it is to get a chance to talk to some of these great athletes or celebrities, you just want to, stay true to kind of what you've always done, and not change anything, and not, feel like the moment's too big because you're talking to a famous person. You want to, just do your job. And if you're well prepared and you have that experience and you get those reps in, it's really not as hard as it maybe sounds to someone that's not, talking about sports for a living and not interviewing people for a living.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that's why you do such a good job interviewing and on your show, is because you treat everyone, just like someone that's like you said, like you're having a drink at a bar, and there's really it does, at least from my perspective, it doesn't seem like you're getting starstruck in any way. With that said, did you ever have that time, or is there a moment that you can recall, like, where you were like, wow, I cannot believe what is going on right now?
Yeah, for sure. I go back to, a couple stories that actually happened when I was, still in college. When I was a senior in college, or going into my senior year, I should say, this is really where the story starts. Going into my senior year of college 4 years ago, I was lucky enough to have been an intern with NBC Sports on site at the Summer Olympics in Rio. So I was in Brazil for almost 6 weeks back in 2016. And I got a chance to connect with Bob Costas, who's obviously, the legendary NBC broadcaster, Olympics host, one of the most successful sports broadcasters ever, and someone that I obviously, have idolized and have been fond of growing up. And I got a chance to work with Bob and kind of form a relationship with him as an intern. And, I remember after I left Rio, I was on a flight from Rio to Newark, where the NBC charter was taking all of us. And Bob Costas was the last person to get his luggage. Like, for whatever reason, I guess he screwed something up where, like, the biggest name on the plane was like the last to get his luggage, like I was. So I remember just talking to Bob, and he tells me, he's like, hey, reach out if you ever want me to come on your show. And he knew I was still in college, but he said, reach out if you ever want me on your show. And I'm like, you're Bob Costas. Like, yes, I definitely want you on my college radio show. So a couple of weeks after that, I reached out to his assistant and, asked his assistant, Bob, to come on and tape an interview with me. And she got back to me right away. Oh, Bob, happy to do it. What time works for you? Got Bob on the phone, did a 20-minute radio interview with him, aired it on my college show. And, that was the only time where I was really starstruck, because here I am, I was just some intern in Rio. Bob Costas didn't have to show me, the time of day. He's probably, met thousands of interns over the years. And, he was kind enough to do, my radio show when I was still a senior in college. So that was definitely a starstruck example, but the interview went well. And, afterwards off air, Bob, said some nice things. So that definitely meant a lot at the time.
That's awesome. And I'm sure he saw something in you that he doesn't always see in interns, which is why that, and you kind of capitalizing on the opportunity, I'm sure he was willing to do that and just being a great guy. But that's interesting you say that. More like, not that he's not famous, but out of all the celebrities and whatnot, someone in a mentorship role is what made a bigger impact on you, and where you felt almost more starstruck, which kind of brings me to my next question for you, which is, how much have you seeked out mentorship in this space, and what's your 2 cents on getting mentorship and how that could help you develop?
Yeah, I think it's extremely important. In fact, I wish that maybe I sought mentorship earlier on when I was still even in high school and college. I kind of was very an independent person. I didn't always want to ask for help necessarily. And that's something that maybe looking back on, I could have done a better job at. But, one of the great things, about, some of the experiences I've had through internships and through my first, couple part-time jobs in New York City. And since I moved here in Houston over the last 2 years, is I've become friends with so many people that are in the same industry that I'm in. So, maybe it's not necessarily like a true mentorship, like this person is so much older than I am, and, I'm looking up to them and constantly seeking advice, but it's more like I have a great group of people that work in my field that I always could check in with and bounce ideas off of. So maybe not your traditional mentorship, but I have a lot of people that I really trust, whose opinions I respect, where if I need to, send them some audio and say, hey, I did this segment today, would love some feedback, how I can get better, I can trust those people. So I think you don't always need that one mentor, but I think having surrounding yourself with a great group of people that maybe have similar goals or have similar experiences that can help you, see things from a different perspective, I think that's incredibly helpful.
I like that a lot. Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't have to be the traditional mentor-mentee relationship that everyone thinks of, but just having a network of people you trust and that are doing a similar thing and you're all kind of growing together works as well. Awesome. Well, Jake, I really, really appreciate the time. Last question to you, and then I'll let you go. I know you're a very busy guy, but what's one thing or one piece of advice you'd give the listeners for trying to, whether it's pursue a career in sports radio or just anything in general from what you've learned over the years?
I would say identify, what it is you want to do, or have an idea what it is you might want to do, and just look into people that are doing it, connect with people that are doing it. One thing from a broadcasting standpoint, I always tell people, and I think I even referenced this earlier in the interview, is that it's never been easier to create content. And, if you want to go into sports media, but you don't really know what, well, there's avenues to just try it when you're still in middle school or high school or even in college on the side. So just whatever it is you want to do, there's no reason not to just start doing it. And you know what? Maybe it doesn't work. Maybe you realize this is not actually what you want to do and you want to pivot to something else, but you're never going to know unless you kind of, stop dipping your toes in. You just go all in and try and do it. So I always tell people that, want to go on the, get into the business is, hey, just start doing it. Who cares? As we talked about, if only 2 people hear your podcast, you need to figure out if this is something you want to pursue. So just get hands-on experience any way possible. And from a broadcasting standpoint, it's never been easier to get, that early on broadcasting type of experience.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Appreciate it, Jake. Where can my listeners find you on social?
Well, I don't have as many followers on Instagram as you, Adam. On Instagram and Twitter at Jake Asman.
All right. Instagram and Twitter at Jake Asman. You heard him. Also, I got to see you on TikTok soon if you're not already on there, because I actually my growth there has been the fastest, surprisingly.
Really? I don't. You're gonna have to explain to me TikTok, because it's one of those things where I just I see all these videos of people dancing, and I'm like, I don't know if sports radio works on that, but you tell me.
We'll talk off air. I think you'd be surprised. All right. Thanks so much, Jake.
You got it, Adam. Thank you so much for having me, man, and congrats to you on all your success. And hopefully, whenever this pandemic ends, I'll see you and the guys in Vegas again. We'll party.
Absolutely. That was a lot of fun.